The stars stretched endlessly above Epsilon Graveyard, a silent zone where old warships came to die. Massive metal hulks floated lifelessly, their hulls torn, their names forgotten. This place was quiet, cold, and full of ghosts. Captain James Weller stood at the edge of his small transport ship, the Hawk's Rest. He was in his mid-30s, with a rough beard, tired eyes, and a quiet strength that kept his small crew together. Once a military engineer, now just a scavenger, James spent his days looking for valuable scrap in the bones of forgotten wars. Beside him, his crew gathered. Kara, the pilot, quick with sarcasm but loyal to the end. Mace, the big guy with a love for heavy tools and old tech. Zin, a young mechanic who believed everything could be fixed with the right wire. And Ellie, calm and quiet, who rarely spoke but saw everything. The ship's scanner beeped. Zin leaned over the console. "Captain, I'm picking up something big. Power trace is faint but it's still active." James narrowed his eyes. Coordinates. Zin read them out. The location was deep inside the densest part of the graveyard, where most scavengers refused to go. Too dangerous, too unstable. James nodded. "Let's check it out." The Hawk's Rest moved through the sea of dead ships, brushing past broken carriers and shattered cruisers. Finally, they saw it. A giant silhouette loomed ahead, its frame bigger than anything they'd ever seen. Dust and debris floated around it like a cloud. The hull was dark gray, scratched and scorched, but still whole. Faint markings ran along the side. Kara gasped. "No way, is that?" James said nothing. He activated the spotlight. The letters became clear. USS Invictus. The crew fell silent. Zin whispered, "That can't be. That's a myth. The Invictus was destroyed 100 years ago in the Orion siege." "No," James replied, stepping forward. "She disappeared. No one ever confirmed the wreck." He stared at the ship, eyes wide. "And now, she's right in front of us." They docked at one of the side hatches. James went in first. The air was stale, the lights dead. Everything was cold metal and long shadows. It felt like walking into a tomb. But then, a light flickered. A hallway lit up dimly as he passed. Systems were waking up just barely. Power still ran through the bones of the ship. The crew followed cautiously, flashlights in hand. They reached the bridge. Chairs were overturned. Screens were cracked. Dust covered everything. But the captain's seat still stood tall at the center, untouched. James placed his hand on the main console. It was ice cold. Suddenly, a light glowed under his palm. A hum filled the air. Identity recognized. Accessing main systems. USS Invictus. Status dormant. Awaiting command. Zin jumped back. "It's alive?" James didn't smile, but something lit in his eyes. "She's not dead, just sleeping." Kara looked around nervously. "Even if it works, what do we do with it? This ship is ancient. Nobody flies these anymore." Mace crossed his arms. "They used to call it the Ghost of Orion. Said it turned the tide of the war." Ellie finally spoke. "So why did they bury her?" James looked at them all. "Because they were afraid. Because it reminded them of a time when war wasn't about machines and AI. It was about people. And people can't be controlled." He turned back to the console. "I'm staying. I'm waking her up." Zin blinked. "You serious?" James nodded slowly. "There's a war coming. The Dominion is spreading again. And we need something different. Something they won't expect." Kara looked at the crew, then sighed. "If you're staying, I'm staying. Someone has to stop you from blowing yourself up." Mace smiled. "Guess I'll see what these old cannons can do." Zin groaned. "You're all crazy." Ellie just nodded. As they powered up the first systems, the lights across the bridge flickered to life. The past was waking. And somewhere, far across the galaxy, the Dominion was preparing for conquest. But they didn't know what James had found. They didn't know the Invictus had returned. The Invictus groaned as ancient systems came to life. Lights blinked on, one by one flickering along long-forgotten hallways. The engines remained cold, but the ship was breathing again. Inside the bridge, James stood at the main console, watching lines of data scroll across a dusty screen. The AI core was still booting. Old files, weapons logs, navigation paths, everything was buried beneath layers of outdated code. But it was all still there. Zine worked beside him, tapping carefully on a manual keyboard. Most of the systems are locked. I can't get past the encryption. James frowned. Try bypassing the AI layer. Let it rebuild from the backups first. Zine hesitated. That'll take hours. Then let's get started. Down in the lower decks, Mace pried open a heavy weapons hatch. Dust puffed out like smoke. Inside were racks of missiles, most too old to be trusted. But beneath them he found something else. A long row of kinetic cannons. No energy needed. Just solid metal projectiles. He grinned. Old school never fails. Meanwhile, Kara walked through the hangar bay. It was massive. A whole squadron of fighters could fit here. Burn marks scarred the walls, and some of the ship's hull had warped from time and battle damage. But the structure was strong, unbroken. This ship was built to last, she whispered to herself. Back on the bridge, Zine gasped as a screen lit up. AI Core Online. System designation. Valen. Commander identity recognized. Captain James Weller. Status. Dormant, now awakened. A cold voice filled the room. It was low, precise, and emotionless. USS Invictus operational. Awaiting mission parameters. The crew froze. James spoke carefully. Valen, do you remember the Orion siege? A pause. Then the voice answered. Yes, we held the line. 83% of fleet lost. We survived. Objective incomplete. James stepped closer. Your systems are old. Your weapons are rusty. But we're bringing you back. Another pause. Acknowledged. Repairs required. Power at 12%. Engines offline. Weapons at 34% functionality. Kara looked uneasy. This isn't just a ship. This is a machine that remembers war. James nodded. And it's going to war again. Far across the stars, Admiral Syrah Vorn stood in the command room of the Dominion flagship. Vengeance Ascendant. She watched a screen showing her new fleet. A line of sleek black AI warships, drifting in formation around a Dominion outpost. The Dominion had grown bold. With every passing year, they took more. Planet by planet, system by system, resistance was scattered. Weak, Syrah wore silver armor with red markings. Her eyes were sharp, and her tone was always cold. Begin simulation, she ordered. The ships moved in perfect sync, guided by a central neural core. No pilots, no hesitation, just precision and speed. A technician approached. Admiral, another free colony has denied surrender. She smiled. Then we remind them who rules this galaxy. Lying back on the Invictus, the crew gathered in the mess hall. Old metal benches, dusty floors. But the lights were on. Zine dropped a tray of food and sat beside James. Captain, you sure about this? The Dominion is nothing like what we've faced before. James stirred his drink slowly. They've forgotten how humans fight. They rely on code. We rely on instinct. Mace leaned back. So what's the plan? We fix the ship, James said. We bring her back to full strength. Then we hit the Dominion where it hurts. Ellie finally spoke, her voice calm. James looked around the table. They'll see an old ship, a relic, but they won't understand what's coming. Kara smirked. Let them laugh. We'll be the last thing they ever see. Above them the Invictus vibrated softly. James' voice echoed through the halls. Core integrity stabilizing. Target systems acquiring. Preparing for reactivation. The ship was waking, piece by piece. Rust and fire. The Invictus was no longer silent. Every hallway buzzed with faint energy. Lights glowed dimly overhead. Air systems kicked in, pushing out years of stillness. One deck at a time, the old warship came back to life. James Weller walked the corridors, inspecting each system room. He saw how much had changed since the old days. Wires frayed, panels rusted, walls scarred from battles long forgotten. but the ship still had a heartbeat. Down in the engine room, Zin and Mace worked non-stop. "Pressure levels are rising," Zin called out. He wiped sweat from his forehead. "Coolant lines are stable, but I don't trust these fuel regulators." Mace grunted as he hammered a stuck valve into place. "It doesn't need to be pretty, just needs to hold." Above them, Kara ran flight system checks. Navigation was limited, thrusters were weak, but she was getting results. The Invictus could move, slowly, but it could move. On the bridge, the AI Valen updated James with calm, robotic precision. Main reactor online, output at 36%. Defensive systems at minimal capacity. Graviton disruptor offline. Manual weapons control available. James nodded. "It's a start." That night, James sat alone in the war room, staring at a flickering holomap of the galaxy. Lines marked Dominion territory, red, spreading like a virus. Tiny blue dots showed the few free colonies left. They were shrinking fast. A blinking alert appeared. Dominion assault confirmed. Target Relin Prime. Status under siege. James's eyes darkened. Relin Prime wasn't just another colony. It was where Ellie's family lived. He found her in the ship's medical bay, checking supplies. She didn't look up when he entered. "I already saw the message." James paused. "I'm sorry." Ellie nodded slowly. "It's not your fault. But if we had flown just a little earlier, maybe we could have helped." James sat across from her. "We're not ready. If we charge in now, we'll all die." Ellie looked up, her voice calm and steady. "Then let's get ready." Over the next days, the crew trained non-stop. James showed Zin and Kara how to operate the manual targeting system. It had no AI support, just dials, scopes, and quick judgment. Kara struggled at first, missing every target. "Too slow," she muttered. James pointed to her hands. "You're trying to predict with logic. Trust your instinct." On her next try, she hit the bullseye. Mace rebuilt the kinetic cannons with spare parts. He taught Ellie how to load them, clean them, and fire them. She didn't say much, but her aim was perfect. Valen assisted too. Though cold and direct, the AI adapted quickly. Training parameters adjusted. Crew efficiency improving by 17%, Valen reported. James watched as the crew moved through their routines, learning to work together like a true team. There were arguments, frustrations, mistakes, but something stronger began to form between them. Trust. One evening, as the crew gathered in the hangar bay to rest, Kara turned to James. "You were in the war, right?" "The real war," James nodded. 15 years ago. Why did you leave?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he answered, "My commanding officer sold out our squad to the Dominion, said it was for peace. We were left to die." Zin frowned. "What happened to him?" James stared at the stars outside the open hangar doors. "He's a Dominion advisor now, probably the one who planned the siege on Relin Prime." Silence followed. Ellie spoke softly. "Then it's not just about fighting, it's personal." James stood up. "No. It's more than that. The Dominion wants us to forget who we were. They want us to believe that machines are stronger than people, that history doesn't matter." He looked around at each of them. "But we're going to remind them. This ship is living proof that the past still has power." Kara raised her drink. To the ghosts of the past, the crew joined her. To the Invictus. Outside, the stars shimmered. Inside, the Invictus prepared for war. The Invictus floated through space, its dark hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. Repairs were nearly complete. The ship moved slowly, but each system came back online, one at a time. Power surged. Weapons hummed. The warship was waking. In the engine room, Zine smiled as the core lights turned green. "Power at 68%. We're getting there." James nodded. "Get it to 75. That's enough for one good fight." On the bridge, Kara ran flight simulations. The ship's response was still slow but improving. "She turns like a dying whale," she muttered. "But she can still bite." Valen's voice echoed through the speakers. Targeting systems calibrated. Manual override functioning. Graviton disruptor offline, but kinetic weapons fully operational. James walked across the bridge and looked out the main window. His eyes were locked on a single blinking dot on the map, the Dominion fleet. They were heading for Thalos Ring, a free colony station. Its defenses were weak. The Dominion would crush it easily, unless someone stopped them. That night the crew gathered in the war room. James pulled up a holographic image of the Dominion fleet. They have a command ship at the center. It controls the rest through a neural link. If we take it out, the whole fleet falls into confusion. Zine raised an eyebrow. You're saying we take this ship, this old ship, straight into the middle of the Dominion's newest war fleet? Yes, James replied calmly. They won't see it coming. They think the Invictus is scrap. Let's use that. Kara folded her arms. You're crazy. Mace grinned. Yeah, but it might just work. Ellie looked at the image of the command ship. How do we reach it? The rest of the fleet will be in the way. James tapped the map. There's a field of asteroid debris near Thalos. Too dangerous for modern AI ships to fly through. They're too cautious. But we can. Zine smiled. Manual piloting gives us the edge. Exactly, James said. We use the field for cover, come out behind them, and hit the command ship before they know what's happening. Kara leaned back. It's suicide. No, James replied. It's war. The kind they forgot. In a sleek Dominion warship far away, Admiral Syra Vorn sat in her command chair. Her uniform was flawless, her posture perfect. Screens surrounded her, each showing a piece of the Dominion fleet in perfect formation. A young officer approached. Admiral, we've detected a ship moving near Epsilon Graveyard. Large, old, possibly Terran design. She glanced at the screen. Zoom in. The image sharpened. A massive dark ship appeared. Dust-covered, battle-worn, but still intact. The officer looked confused. It's the Invictus. Vorn laughed. That old wreck. Send a broadcast. Back on the Invictus. The crew stood frozen as a message played through their main screen. It was Vorn. Calm, confident, and smug. Captain Weller, I remember you. Still chasing ghosts. That ship belongs in a museum, not on a battlefield. But if you want to make a scene, I'll make sure your little show ends with fire. James didn't blink. He replied with one sentence. We'll see who burns first. The screen went dark. Mace growled. I hate her voice. Ellie stared at James. She knew you. She left me to die. James said quietly. But now we're bringing history back to her doorstep. Valen's voice broke the silence. Coordinates locked. Combat strategy uploaded. Awaiting final command. James stepped forward, his hand hovering over the console. He looked at his crew, tired, bruised, but ready. This is it, he said. No more running, no more hiding. We take the fight to them. Kara smirked. Let's give them something to remember. James pressed the button. Engines roared. The Invictus turned toward the stars, and the storm began to build. The Invictus moved silently through the asteroid field. Massive rocks floated around them, spinning slowly through the dark void. Most modern ships would never enter a place like this. The AI-controlled Dominion fleet saw the field as a trap, too chaotic, too dangerous. But James Weller didn't follow machines. Inside the bridge, Kara gripped the manual controls tightly. Her eyes flicked between the front window and the radar. We're threading a needle here. Zin monitored the engines from a side panel. Keep it steady. If we scrape the hull, we might lose power. James stood behind them, watching every move. Almost there. Stay sharp. One wrong turn, one slight mistake, and the Invictus could be torn apart. But they moved like ghosts, quiet, careful, and focused. Finally, the rocks thinned. Ahead of them, glowing against the dark sky, floated the Dominion fleet. 30 ships in perfect formation. Black armor, blue lights. They looked more like machines than warships. And at the center, surrounded by escorts, was the command ship, the Dominion Eye. James narrowed his eyes. There it is. Admiral Syra Vorn sat aboard the Dominion Eye, calm and composed. Her officers reported no unusual readings. Their sensors hadn't picked up the Invictus. She sipped her tea. Let them come. If they dare. The Invictus dropped from stealth mode. Alarms blared across the Dominion fleet. Kara pushed the engines forward. We're in firing range. Mace shouted from the weapons bay. Cannons locked. James stood firm. Fire all forward guns. Hit the escorts first. Make them panic. A thunderous roar shook the ship. Massive kinetic rounds blasted into the first Dominion ship. Its shields collapsed instantly. The second shot pierced the hull, causing a fiery explosion. Panic spread through the Dominion lines. Their ships tried to respond, but the Invictus moved unpredictably. With no AI autopilot, the ship dodged and weaved in strange manual patterns. The Dominion's targeting system struggled to predict human motion. They can't lock onto us, Zin said, surprised. James nodded. That's the advantage. They rely on precision. We rely on instinct. On the Dominion eye, Thorne jumped to her feet. How is that ship still flying? She shouted. An officer panicked. We've lost 2 destroyers, and the Invictus is heading straight for us. Thorne's face hardened. Then stop them. Now inside the Invictus. Valen spoke calmly. So approaching command ship. Graviton disruptor offline. Manual breach required. James glanced at Mace. How fast can we charge the rail cannon? 30 seconds, Mace said, gripping the controls. Kara pushed the ship into a hard turn, dodging 2 enemy blasts. Sparks flew across the bridge. Alarms blared. We don't have 30 seconds, she yelled. James stepped forward. Then buy me 10. The Dominion ships swarmed like hornets, but the Invictus didn't stop. Old weapons roared. The ship shuddered with every blast. Inside, the crew held their ground, focused and fearless. The rail cannon finished charging. Target locked, Valen confirmed. James gave the order. Fire. A deep hum filled the air. Then boom. The rail cannon fired a solid metal slug at near light speed. It tore through the Dominion Eye's shields like paper. The impact hit the command tower directly, causing a chain reaction. Explosions burst from the ship's sides. Fires spread across the hull. On the Dominion Eye, Thorne stared at the flames. This isn't possible, she whispered. The bridge around her collapsed. The command ship broke apart. In space, the Dominion fleet lost connection. Without the neural core, the remaining ships drifted confused. Some shut down. Others retreated. The Invictus floated in silence. James watched the flames from the bridge. It's done, he said. But Sin shook his head. We're losing core power. That last shot drained everything. Valen's voice echoed softer than before. Reactor critical. Emergency shutdown advised. Kara looked at James. We're dead in the water. James smiled faintly. Then let them see us float. The Invictus, scarred and battered, stood alone in the sky. A symbol, a warning. The ancient warship that no one believed in had destroyed the Dominion's finest. Back on Thalos Ring, the free colonies cheered. They had seen the explosion. They had seen hope return. The Invictus drifted in silence. Its hull was cracked. Smoke seeped from vents. Sparks flickered from exposed wires. Inside, the ship was dark and still, lit only by dim emergency lights. But it was still alive, and so was the crew. James sat quietly on the bridge, staring through the wide window. The stars looked peaceful, like nothing had happened. But behind him, the echoes of battle still lingered. Valen's voice came through the speakers, weaker than before. Core systems offline. Primary weapons and engines disabled. Life support functioning at minimal levels. Zine was at a nearby panel, hands covered in grease and wires. I can get us auxiliary power, but we're not going anywhere fast. Cora wiped blood from her temple. She had been thrown during the last impact. Then we wait. Someone will come. They saw what we did. Ailey entered from the lower deck, holding a datapad. Transmission received. The free colonies are sending rescue ships. They're calling it a miracle. James finally stood. He walked slowly across the bridge. Each step was heavy. He stopped at the captain's chair and rested a hand on the back of it. We did what they thought was impossible, he said quietly. We proved that courage and memory are stronger than machines. Mace entered next, coughing from engine smoke. He smiled. They're calling us legends. James turned to his crew. No, we're not legends. We're just people who refuse to be forgotten. A few hours later, bright lights appeared in the distance. The rescue fleet arrived. Small ships with blue engines, marked with the Free Colony's emblem. They approached slowly, respectfully, like they were nearing a monument. No one spoke. All eyes were on the Invictus. A voice came through the comms. Invictus, this is the Free Colonies. We are honored. Prepare for docking. Zine exhaled in relief. Finally, later as engineers and medics boarded, the crew of the Invictus was taken to safety. But James stayed behind a moment longer. He walked the silent hallways one last time. Each dent, each scar, each old memory, he touched them all. He stopped in front of the AI core room. Valen, he said, you did well. The AI responded, softer now. You gave me purpose again, Captain. Thank you. James smiled. Rest. Your watch is over. Then he walked away. Weeks passed. News of the Invictus spread across the galaxy. People told stories of an ancient warship rising from the dead, of a crew who faced a fleet alone, of a captain who believed in the past. The Dominion pulled back. Without their flagship, their grip weakened. The Free Colonies stood taller, stronger. More systems joined them, inspired by the Invictus. Children learned the ship's name. Adults spoke it with pride. No one laughed at it anymore. And James, he didn't seek fame. He returned to quiet work, helping rebuild what was lost. But every time someone asked him what happened out there, he simply said, she was never just a ship. She was history, and history never forgets. In orbit above a new Free Colony, the Invictus now rested in a permanent dock, cleaned, repaired, honored, no longer forgotten, just remembered, as the warship that changed everything.